Our conversation resumed. You know who I've always wanted to get to know? Who? I asked. That guy, John, the assistant manager. Do you remember him? Yeah, why? He always came across as an artistic type. Did he really? I pictured him in my head. He had been a young, good-looking man who was nearly finished with law school. He was bound for success, and he had been dating a model for a couple of years. I met him for drinks when he first started, but had rarely seen or spoken to him since then. Yeah, he did. Did you know him very well? I shook my head. Oh, I see, that's a shame. I took a sip of my wine. She went on. I heard a rumor that he was dating a model. Is that true? I nodded, taking another sip of wine. Its flavor was robust. I poured myself another glass. Oh, her spirits took a noticeable dive. That's a shame. I smiled. Why's that? She regained her composure and shied away, embarrassed. Well, he's so great. He's charming, handsome, smart. I was totally taken with him the first time I met him. I was honestly hoping to meet him for drinks sometime, but I guess the rumors are true. He's already in a relationship, unfortunately. I bit down on the rim of my wine glass. It was all I could do to avoid lashing out at her and tearing out her throat in public. I was hoping that maybe you could introduce me to him, but I guess it's pointless now. She laughed and shrugged her shoulders while enjoying my fine wine. I tried to smile, but I soon realized that I couldn't. My grin fell into disarray and became a jagged display of teeth from which came a throaty, condescending chuckle. The bitch didn't even notice, however. She poured herself another glass of wine. This wine is absolutely fabulous. It is, I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. Moments before, I had felt guilty about my violent activities. I had been reevaluating my way of life and had nearly decided to give up killing. Yes, I decided that there was no longer any joy in doing such things. I no longer saw a reason for it. But now, the only reason I needed was sitting across from me at the dinner table of this crowded Italian restaurant. Like a chance meeting between two old friends, I suddenly recalled my motivation. And I realized, as I watched her sitting there, that I wanted nothing more in the world than to make her suffer for what she had said. She kept talking. I wasn't listening, but I would nod occasionally as to maintain an illusion of interest. I ordered a second bottle of wine and refreshed her glass any time it sank below the halfway mark. My companion was getting tipsy. She played further and further into my hand with every sip of Sauvignon Blanc. The food didn't taste like anything to me. I poked at it and forced some of it down my throat. I went through the motions, mimicking the other humans in the room. Eating the food that I had ordered appeared to be the human thing to do. Of course, I wasn't like the other humans in the restaurant. My mind was reeling with hate. I was a devil, blending in with a bunch of imbeciles, biding my time. The food is great, she exclaimed, drunken and sloppy. I responded by filling her wine glass to the brim. She worked on her meal obediently, oblivious to the scowl on my face. I showered her with dirty looks. What you looking at? She noticed the hostility in my gaze. Nothing at all, I replied. In truth, I was imagining how satisfying it would be to pry out her eyeballs with the tip of a Phillips head screwdriver. The thought conjured up a genuine smile. She saw this grin spread across my lips, and she then returned to her meal. I threw down my fork once I decided she was drunk enough and asked the dashing young waiter for the bill. The meal came to a whopping $93, thanks to the huge volume of wine I had ordered. My date scrambled through her purse clumsily and handed me her credit card. Let's split the bill, she hiccuped. When the waiter came around, I handed him Sweet's credit card as though it were my own. This meal would be on her. I refused to pay a single cent. I had been humiliated enough already. I would not be made a fool of any longer. She was too drunk to notice, and she signed the receipt sloppily when he brought it to the table. I helped her to her feet and began for the door. Her steps were unsteady. The only thing keeping her upright was my firm grasp. I led her outside where it was raining heavily. Listen, I told her in my most reasonable tone of voice. I know you like that wine a lot. I've got some better stuff at my place. Would you like to have one more drink with me tonight? She hiccuped and burped, but gave no other audible response. I took that as a yes. We walked all the way back to my apartment in the rain. When we arrived, I sat her down on the sofa to keep her from falling over. She was damp with rain and babbling nonsensically. Her long black hair was matted against her forehead and neck, and her dress stuck to her body. In the folds of the cold, wet dress, I saw her nipples standing erect. Let me find a good bottle, I called out as cheerfully as I could. I spoke loudly, as if I were the host of a big party, speaking to no one in particular. I opened my pantry and rummaged around for a few minutes before finding 8 bottles of wine. They differed in size and build. I took each one in hand and studied it closely, weighing it and grasping the neck of each bottle tightly. I wanted to know which one felt most natural in my hands. "I think you'll really like this one," I said aloud, picking up a bottle of Dom Perignon. It was a thick bottle with an olive-colored base. The label read 1996. What had I been up to in 1996? The bottle was fairly old, and I thought to myself that I had almost certainly been happier with my life in 1996. I had been saving it for a long while. However, I felt that the time had finally come for me to share it. And share it I did. I took the bottle by the neck and smashed it against the crown of Sui Yanqing's unsuspecting head. She regained consciousness nearly 2 hours later. Her eyes crept open as she came to. Her narrow eyes scanned the room, blank and vacant. Although her eyes were open, it didn't seem like her brain could make sense of what she was seeing. She lowered her head. It drooped as though overburdened by the weight of her newfound cognizance. And then suddenly, her eyes sprung wide open. "Now, don't struggle," I advised her from across the living room as I saw her awaken with a jerk. I was sitting in a recliner across from her with a cup of Darjeeling tea held tight within my fist. She struggled to speak, but couldn't. Frantic vocalizations were held captive in her throat by a single strip of duct tape which was fixed across the length of her mouth. "Oh, how rude of me. Would you like a cup of tea?" She squealed and struggled. "No, of course not. You don't really seem like a tea drinker." I stood up. "It's my favorite kind of tea, Darjeeling. You know, they call it the champagne of black teas." I took a loud sip, slurping and vocalizing with pleasure. "Oh my, that's good," I grinned. She was seated on a wooden chair in the center of my living room. The curtains had been drawn tight, and the only light in the space was that which drifted in from the kitchen. Her hands were bound to the back of the chair with an unreasonably tight knot, fashioned by the thickest, sturdiest rope I could get my hands on. Similar restraints bound her ankles to the legs of the chair. I tied her down in such a way that the slightest degree of friction would cause great discomfort. She was my captive. I would not leave anything to chance. I couldn't afford to cut corners at this stage. "It looks like you're a little preoccupied, so allow me to describe it to you. I'm a very cultured man, Sui. I'm sophisticated. The least I can do is educate some simpleton like you in the ways of tea drinking. It's generous of me, I know." I sat down in front of her on the floor. "Darjeeling is light and aromatic. Its color is exactly what you'd expect from a black tea, yet its flavor is what sets it apart." I took a whiff of the tea. Steam poured off of the top and tickled my nose as I sniffed. "It's best served piping hot, this tea. I don't much care for it iced. In fact, only a barbarian would dare make Darjeeling iced." I reached up from my spot on the floor and caressed her leg. My hand traveled further up her dress before finally coming to rest on her bare knee. Lifting her dress, I put the scalding hot cup against her inner thigh with a swift motion, allowing a few ounces of the hot tea to spill over the rim of the cup and onto her legs and panties. She thrashed with vigor. I let the cup sit there for nearly a minute, allowing a rosy burn mark to form on her delicate skin. "Darjeeling isn't for everyone, though. It's a tea reserved for those of us with good taste," I concluded, pulling away the mug and taking a sip. Tears were streaming from her eyes. Her makeup was running down the sides of her slender face and upon the strip of gray tape that held her mouth shut. Her grunting and struggling was loud, but not loud enough to attract anyone's attention in this near-empty apartment complex. I stood up and touched her cheek with a few shaky fingers. I slowly, sensuously traced the trail of tears and cosmetics. "I want to know something, so please answer me honestly." I looked her in the eye once more, my face inches away from hers. "Are you frightened?" Shutting her eyes tightly, she gave a reluctant nod and whimpered like an animal. "I appreciate your honesty. I really do. It means more to me than you'll ever know. I asked you because I want to offer you one way to escape this situation. You do want to escape, right?" She nodded once more with fervor. "That's what I thought. And it's actually very easy, my dear. All you have to do is ask for his help." Her expression shifted back into one of confusion. I stared into her eyes intensely. "Ask John for help. Ask him to come save you. He's so great, remember? You told me all about him, about how wonderful he is. You spoke so well of him. I'm sure that he cares about you very much." I stood up. "Just call out to him. Bring him here. He can save you, right? He's strong enough, smart enough to rescue you from my foolish plot, right?" She began to tremble. I reached behind the chair and took one of her bound hands in mine. "Why don't you ask for his help? Why hasn't he shown up yet? You care about him so much, it's only a matter of time, I'm certain. He's going to come in through that door and put an end to my madness, isn't he? I stood up and stretched. Or could it be that he doesn't give a fuck about you? She struggled against her restraints. Futile. That's exactly right. I remember now. He doesn't care about you at all, does he? He doesn't love you. He won't come here to help you. I grinned, piercing her with my stare. He doesn't love you, not like I could have. With a sinister grin still fixed upon my lips, I began to search for a quality murder weapon.